like you to turn to the first of the minor prophets. His name is Hosea. Hosea comes just after Daniel, depending on whether we consider Daniel a minor or major prophet. I certainly consider him to be a major prophet, but Hosea is the first of the minor prophets. And the story goes like this. Go and take Gomer. And it's like, Hosea could have had these thoughts like, Gomer? But she had a reputation that she got around. And maybe Hosea wasn't thrilled about this, but maybe the thought came into his head, hey, I'm a prophet. God's told me to take Gomer for a wife. Maybe he's changed her heart. Oh, joy of joys. I can be a man of God and have a hot wife. Oh, yeah. So he marries her. She goes on to have what we know, at least what we know, is another 2 children. And they're not Hosea's. And the text is very, very subtle about this. The first child, it says, and she bore him a son. Then the text says, she bore a daughter. Then it says, she bore a son. And it's very subtle. In other words, they weren't Hosea's. So she's already playing to her reputation. And one day someone came along and they had a big fat wallet. They drove a big fat chariot with shiny mag chariot wheels. And they had like the finest whatever coat, mink coat or whatever it is. And they came along and they kind of enticed her. And they just opened up the wallet and showed her the shiny chariot and showed her the holiday house and the mansion here and this, that and the other. And her heart, being so fickle, was just swept along. And she went along with this rich guy. And then eventually, after he'd had his way with her, he dumped her, as tends to happen. And Gomer's now with the third guy in succession who's taken her in, and she's living with him and he's showering her with gifts. And then eventually he tosses her aside and she gets with another guy, and he's a drunk. He just drinks. He doesn't treat her that well. But by this stage, she's just so desperate. What does it matter? And then one day, many years later, this guy's down at the bar having a drink, and in walks a man, a very distinguished man. And he comes up to this guy at the bar and says, "Excuse me, are you with Gomer?" And he says, "Yes, I am. What's it to you?" And he says, "I'm her husband." "How is she?" Ugh. Hosea then reaches into his wallet, pulls it out and says, "Here, could you buy her some things for me? Make sure she's got plenty of food and clothing, and make sure those kids of her are well looked after." And gives this guy a wad of money. The guy's probably thinking, "Idiot. Yeah, right, whatever." Takes the money. Who knows what he does with it. Eventually he gets tired of her. And he gets so broke, probably due to his drinking binges, that he offers Gomer for sale as a slave. The Lord says to Hosea, "Go down to the slave market and buy her back." So he goes down to the slave market, and there's Gomer, stripped naked, literally on a public pedestal in the market square, naked there before everybody. The auctioneer says, "What am I bid for this woman?" 1 shekel's offered, and the gamel's about to come down, and Hosea puts his hand up and makes a bid. 15 shekels of silver. The auctioneer's stunned. 15 shekels of silver, that's more than a year's wages. Who would spend that much on a worthless piece of trash like this? Well, whatever. Quick, I better put that going once, twice, three hammer down before he changes his mind. And before he puts it down for the third time, he says, and I up my bid. I want to add 2 barley harvests to it. I want to add 2 great big sheaves of barley to my bid. The auctioneer's thinking, you're nuts. Going once, going twice, going boom, 3 times, sold, yours. He takes his cloak. He puts it around her. He takes her by the shoulders. He looks her in the eyes. And he says this, no more running away. I'm your husband. From now on, you'll come home and you'll only live with me. And I'll only live with you. That's the story of Hosea.